Hey everybody, what's up? This is episode number 48 of Free Real Estate Advice Fridays. Today we got a special guest, Ms. Lori Ferri from Ironworks Fitness, my personal gym, and located in the Flemington area. I think technically Raritan Township. And we'll talk to Lori a little bit, not only about her business, but also she did sell and buy a house with me. So we'll talk a little bit about that. She had some pretty unique experience, so I will tell her to share some talking points with us. As always, if you know any local small businesses that want to get on here and just promote their business, I'm always happy to have people. The hardest part of this is actually tracking them down and scheduling it. So if you know anyone that might be interested, just message me or text me or email me or whatever, and I'll be happy to have them on. So we're going to bring Lori in. I met Lori probably about 3 years ago. I was interviewing a lot of local businesses back then, basically for a service that I was using called Park Bench that was kind of centric around dealing with local small businesses. It's just a way to network. And I was introduced to Lori by Mr. Paul Hyatt from Skunktown Brewery, Skunktown Distillery. And I interviewed him and he said, "Oh, you got to meet Lori." So I went over and met Lori. And I think that was in spring of 2019. I was just getting started in real estate and I met Lori and I told her as soon as I got my business established, because I was pretty broke at the time, being unexpectedly in real estate full time, I said I'd come back when I had some money. And that's what I did, I think roughly November 2019. And I've been there ever since. So this will be the 3-year anniversary this month of me going there. And my wife is also a member now. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But without further ado, I will bring in Lori. Hey, Lori.
Hey, thanks for
having me. How we doing?
Me.
You got it.
Doing good.
All right. So we do have a few viewers, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about Ironworks before we talk about real estate. So why don't you start by, I mentioned everyone, it's been about 3 years I've been with you. Yep. And why don't you start with just giving us a little background on how Ironworks was established?
Yeah. So there are a lot of gyms in the area that really focus on group training. So I really worked hard to create a program that is customized around each individual. So Ironworks offers a semi-private program, which looks at you as an individual. Everyone's different. And I think when it comes to strength training, your program should be customized, as opposed to working out in a group setting where everybody's doing the same movements, maybe with different weights, but that doesn't always work because you have to consider modalities, injuries, mobility. There's so many factors that go into creating a successful exercise program. So I've taken that and I customize programs for each individual. So I work with everyone from athletes to competitors to just general fitness. We usually bring them in first for a functional movement screening, and that basically assesses their movement, their mobility, their skill set. And then based on the results of the assessment and based on what their goals are, I create a workout program for them that's almost always based on progression, so that, we can take measurable steps throughout the program. We keep track of everything, and then we reassess every 6 weeks. So I have people that come to me that are recovering from knee surgery. I have people that come to me that are like you, that are recovering from back surgery. I also have people that are very proficient in strength programs and just want to do that. So it really just depends on what the person needs and what the person wants. And then we customize a program from there. And I also kind of take the same approach from a nutrition standpoint. I don't think everyone's created equally when it comes to nutrition. So if someone does need nutrition help, I don't push it on anybody. But if they do, it's not a cookie cutter approach. Same approach that we take to creating strength programs and conditioning programs, or for whatever the client needs. We take that same approach for nutrition, and it's sort of ever changing. So we work with each client over the course of, we try to make things maintainable, sustainable, more of a life management program.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give you my perspective. I've been there for 3 years. I did come in with some stuff. I was not too far removed from knee surgery. And then I did the fitness assessment with you. And at the time I was probably about 50 pounds overweight,
Yep.
smoking a pack a day, still drinking at the time.
All the
And
good things.
all the good things. So I had a lot of stuff going on. I hadn't really hit a gym in a long time. I had, a background with that, but it had been a very long time. And I'd really never had a trainer other than like in high school. Um, and you snapped me into shape. I think the first 2 cycles I did with you, I just told you functional fitness. I just want to be able to pick up my kids and be able to get off the floor easier. And so for the first 2 sessions, I think I kind of stuck with whatever you gave me. And then after that, as you know, I hate conditioning, so I try to do that on my own, and I just stuck with the strength training. And I did that, I'm sure you know this, but I did that very specifically just because I wanted to still have it be fun for me to go to Ironworks and not have to dread the fact that I'm going to be doing conditioning.
And it's
And
always fun.
yeah. And the biggest thing for sure was that I did not want the group fitness thing, because that was always a problem for me, especially since I really don't like doing conditioning. So, most of the group classes are kind of one size fits all and a ton of conditioning. And I knew I just wasn't going to be able to kind of stick with it and make it my own. So you have definitely done that. I've since then lost probably 25, 30 pounds, fluctuate between those two. Definitely have more strength than I've ever had in my life. Not even close. And that's through a background of sports and everything else. I just really never had a focused program. And, I think all of us that are like have gym experience, but really not a whole lot of guidance other than maybe apps or something like that, we don't push ourselves enough. And I think that you introduced to me, like, you got to keep pushing your weights up and you got to try to break through plateaus and stuff like that. So that's been a huge help. Um, I tell people all the time also, you're very skilled at getting through to me, which is no easy thing, because you have a good balance of like not barking at me, but also like, Craig, come on, like, get
I
it
don't,
together.
I don't think I
Um,
need to bark.
yeah. And that's good because, sometimes, strength coaches all have different styles. I think your style's, very kind of accommodating, and but also anyone who knows you and has worked with you is you definitely have a no BS approach too, but it's done in a manner that kind of puts it back on me instead of just barking at me. You're like, all right, Craig, come on, like let's get it together. Do your warm ups, do your, whatever it is that I'm refusing to do, or just being lazy, or using my phone or whatever.
Yes.
So and that's great, because I think that is definitely what's needed. I know that since then my wife has joined. And I don't know how long Shannon's been there. Do you have any idea? I think it's
Uh,
over a year.
yeah, well, Shannon started out with me in my online program. So I
That's
also,
right.
yeah. So during the pandemic, which, as if you own a gym or any small business, they made it very hard for us to stay open and survive. So I started an online coaching business during that time, and it just seemed to really take off. And just like the actual Ironworks, I've just built the business through referrals. That's really
Yeah.
been the most success I've had with clients, is just that people just keep on sending me people. So
Yeah.
that's been really good. And I think what makes Ironworks really unique is that, being that we look at everyone as an individual, we really try and make your program translate into your everyday life.
Yeah.
So your movements, your programming, your movement patterns, things like that translate well into what you do every day,
Totally.
and we really do, for the most part, service general fitness. So we do have some competitors and some bodybuilders, and that's a completely different game and program. And I think it's also nice that you get to work out in a small group setting, and everyone's on their own program. So you get the kind of community feel
Yeah.
without, me standing over you one on one. And
Yeah.
I think
100%.
I think that we've built a really great community of people.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, it's definitely personal training. But it's not at the it's not like I have to take you over to Planet Fitness and you have to stand over me and work out with me the whole time, because I hate that as well. I actually, my entire life, except for maybe a few short stints, I've always worked out by myself. It's just kind of, that's me time. So having to have a trainer like standing next to me the whole time is not appealing, but you are generally 5 to 10 feet away and keeping an eye on me. There is definitely the community aspect because, you know, people are hitting goals near you, or they're excited, or they're exasperated, or whatever. It's definitely got that same kind of group feel, but I'm not doing their workout and they're not doing my workout.
Right.
So it's a really good balance. And, you know, you and I have talked a lot about marketing our respective businesses, especially as it relates to like online marketing. And you know, the tricky thing I think for probably both of us is that there's no hook to our businesses. Like there's no gimmick, there's no, you know, there's no marketing hook of, you know, join my 6-week program and you'll be, you know, 20 pounds lighter and shredded. It's definitely more of a long-term choice, and it can be a slow burn, especially if you're just doing, you know, starting with functional fitness. But I think, you know, what I would tell people, and I've gotten some people into your program, including my wife, is that, you know, after like 2 months, you definitely see some results. And after 3, 4, 5 months, you start to really see results. And then you can, as you said, reassess and say, all right, well, this is what I really want to do. Now that I've got the basics down, this is what I'm really going for. And if that is competing, or it is, you know, adding strength, or, you know, continue to do the functional thing, it's great. And that's truly unique, because I know, you know, CrossFit's all the rage these days, or Peloton, or whatever it is, but you don't get that personal attention and choice to kind of take your own path. So it's fantastic. But Shannon's like, she's probably a better litmus test than me. I mean, I've done the slow burn thing probably because I am slow and I go to the gym and I take my time, and I'm, you know, no one's mistaken the fact that I'm pushing myself. I'm not doing anything extreme. But Shannon's like, yeah, I do show up. That's kind of what I preach to everyone, is just show up. And I'm there 4 days a week. So that's, you know, that's probably on the higher side of what most people do. But Shannon's great because she's just so compliant, and she's just a very different person than me, but she has you've given her the tools to just show up and do exactly what you're telling her to do.
And she does exactly
she really
what I tell
does.
her to do.
Yeah, that is definitely, I mean, honestly, that's definitely one of her skills, is like, you know, it's not just in fitness, it's really in anything. It's like, just show me what to do and I'll do it.
Well, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right?
That's definitely true. Yeah, and she's been amazing. I mean, she's definitely both of us are in the best shape of our lives. It's not even close. And, you know, the second whole layer of this is that when roughly around the time Shannon started, she dove right into the nutrition aspect, because I think it's more a part of your online program, where it's not necessarily part of the fitness program, only because some people just choose not to do it. And I was one of those people. So I was doing all kinds of stuff. I think when we first started, I was doing keto, and then I was doing intermittent fasting. Yep. And really, like, you know, they are what they are. And I had some success with them in the past, but they're really not sustainable. And then finally, I kind of gave myself over when Shannon started with, you know, the nutrition plan that you recommended. And I've been doing it pretty religiously since. That's probably been roughly a year. And that's where I lost most of my weight. So I was definitely getting in better shape prior to that, but I don't think I was losing a whole lot of weight. So we actually, there's a picture of Shannon and I at my daughter's 5-year birthday party, and we're standing in front of the house. And so that was only like a year and a half ago. And we both comment that like we look horrible. Like I was already well established at the gym. But we were just like, we're both just like, wow, we were so much bigger then in all the wrong ways. So, and
well, I think that really speaks to, you know, I'm just not a proponent of gimmicky, quick fix, 30-day this, 6-week that, shred this, shred that. It's just, you really need to find, all of those things can become so rigid in such a short period of time that you can't sustain it and you can't maintain it.
Totally.
So, you know, lifestyle management, things that you can do every day, sustain, maintain, are the things that work with consistency.
Yeah, definitely. You know, your nutrition approach was something that was new to me. There really is no restrictions. I mean, there are parameters, but there's really no restrictions. So like, I love pizza. I still have my pizza day every Friday. I kind of work around it with using the parameters that I'm given. And I really don't do many cheat days. I mean, there are some days I cheat. Shannon literally doesn't do cheat days. She doesn't cheat at all. Everything goes in the app. She tracks everything. I'm probably about 90%. She's probably 100%. So it really is, but again, it's a slow burn. It's not like keto intermittent fasting where you see 20 pounds drop off immediately, but then, 3 months later, you're right back to square one. And I've done that for, 15 years. But this is something that's much more long-term. I even commented to, Shannon that, the Halloween candy's all out now. And I just grabbed a piece and I'm like, I don't think I like Halloween candy like I used to. It's just my whole thing has changed so much because of that slow burn that it became a lifestyle instead of, having to try to stick to a diet. We don't even think about it as a diet anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's where, customized nutrition and training come in. Nutrition can be very rigid, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of different approaches that you can take.
Yeah.
To be successful in a nutrition program. It doesn't have to be so rigid. Some people like to go that way, but it doesn't have to be in order for you to get results. It just needs to be maintainable.
Totally agree. And this is something that I think, like I said, I didn't have to cut out anything I really loved. You can't go crazy. I mean, you can't eat like tons of pasta or you can't eat tons of carbs, period. But it's not like keto where you're like, I can't eat carbs. So you still get to eat all the things you love. So
unless you're Jana.
Unless you're Jana, yeah.
And then you can eat 500 grams of carbs a day.
Yeah, but she has a purpose. I don't have an excuse to eat 500 carbs a day.
That's the bodybuilding side.
Yeah. I'm not in that world. All right. Well, I mean, I definitely encourage anyone to come to Ironworks. I've encouraged many before, and it's really quite easy. I mean, you have a pretty flexible schedule wise. It's not the kind of gym where you just show up. Every session is scheduled. But that for us, that works with kids and whatnot because it's in our calendar and we just know when we're going to be there. And at this point, we've just established what the cadence is of Shannon getting there and then me getting there.
You have to just treat it like any other appointment.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I can't preach enough. It's really nothing more than just showing up. And then, even if you're going to slog through your workouts like I am, if you just keep showing up, it'll be fine.
So, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hard time.
You will. And I need that hard time sometimes. Just like I give you a hard time about your music selections, but that's
we're never going to agree on that.
No, we're not. No.
Not.
I don't know. There's hope for you someday that we'll get you on my music, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
I can listen to your music. I just can't work out to it.
Can't work out to it. Yeah. All right. That's fair. All right. So let's move on to, did you have anything else you wanted to add about Ironworks?
Yeah, no. I think we pretty much covered everything.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone watching in the future, has any questions, of course, reach out to Lori, but I mean, I'm happy to always give my personal perspective. If they want basically a reference for Lori, I definitely would be happy to talk about my experience. And Shannon also. Shannon's a great example of major life-changing. I mean, we would both without question say it's changed our lives. So, and it was a decision I made ahead of time of like, I need to change my life because I have kids and I want to be around a little bit and I want to be healthier. But you were definitely the tool that actually showed me some tools to get there. But we would both without question say it definitely changed our lives. So thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I don't tell you enough. But yeah, it's really great, and it's all great people there, and it's an easy place to go every morning. I talked to our mutual friend Angela this week, and I said every time I pull up to that gym, I'm not like amped to go into the gym because I don't love working out, but I'm glad it's that gym. I know what I'm walking into. I'm happy to see the people that are there. And it's for me, it's like the perfect structure to be able to continue to just show up. So
that's all that matters.
Yep. All right. So let's talk about, you had the, some might say pleasure, some might say other that buying and selling with me. So, and you did not have an easy situation. So I just thought it'd be interesting. We won't get into too much detail with it, but I thought there was definitely some some talking points worth talking about. And I'll tell you how this like came up as far as like you're actually the first former client I've interviewed on here. Actually, last week we had Jeff and Joe on here who helped you with your loan.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I haven't done former clients. You happen to be a local business and a former client, but it's something I might do more of in the future. But let's talk about your selling side first. Now, I told you up front that I thought your selling was going to be easy, and the very distinct reason for that was that you are my stager, so you do stage a lot of homes for me.
Yeah.
So I knew that your staging would be pristine, and that's like a huge thing that we really try to stress to people. Now, I stress this to people because I use you to go help me with the staging. But it was a really good case study because at the time your neighbor's house was for sale too.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say I was concerned. I'm not sure if you were concerned because they weren't having a ton of success over there. And there were obviously some specific reasons for that. But I thought it was interesting. And it happens a lot to us where you have two houses for sale right next to each other, especially in a complex like yours that are very similar, and one is staged and one is not. And I knew that this was going to benefit you. It might have even benefited them that you went for sale because we had, I forget exactly how many offers we had. I want to say 14, 15, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah. So
And I think we had an open house on the same day, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people were literally leaving your house and being like, oh, well, this one's for sale too. I'll walk in, or vice versa. So it actually kind of worked out, but not for nothing, walking into your place at the time, which again, it was a little bit different. I think, did you have one more bedroom than them?
Yes, I had one more bedroom.
Yeah. And they had a totally different layout.
They had a different layout, and
Yeah.
I had a lot more, like my kitchen was upgraded and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that not all the buyers that looked at both those units could make either of the units work, but there definitely were some where they like looked at yours and they're like, all right, well, we'll try, but maybe we can get this one instead. But yeah, we had a ton of activity on the open house. Again, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say it was probably about 40 groups that came through. And that was probably right around the peak of the market. Your house was staged pristinely. It was clean, as I knew it would be. I know what you went through to keep it in that state, and that's definitely representative of you and how you operate, and that's great. But all of those things are huge because, as you know, because of our side hustle with the staging, is clients don't always listen as far as like the staging or decluttering and all that goes. Like everyone has different standards.
Right.
Even when I go on listing appointments, like I look around, I'm like, oh boy, we need a lot of work here. But they might not see it that way. So then it's like a matter of like trying to convince them.
Tactfully.
Definitely. Cause I can't become an enemy too early in the process. And you find out with clients, some of them want you to just tell you what they want to hear. And then some of them, really want to say like, Craig, help me. What do I do here? And it's like 50-50. So we've had some mutual clients like thinking about like Stacy and Rich, who had the beautiful house over in Raritan Township,
Right.
big giant house. And I remember that they were like scrambling prior to us taking the photographs to hit like the last 3 things that you had recommended to them, which was literally like them running to like Home Goods and like finding a basket for their citrus. But like that level of detail definitely helped them. And it's not always like that. So you definitely hit that. And that's a huge thing because it definitely helped you. You ended up with a all cash offer. Did they do a home inspection? I don't remember.
They did, but they kind of waived the.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it didn't matter. Like it was just for their knowledge.
Yeah.
They waived whatever the results were. So
Yeah. That process went very well. In the meantime, you were also trying to buy a house, obviously. And
that was the hard part.
Yeah. Anytime we need to, and that's what I told you. I said, selling your place is going to be a piece of cake. That's always tough. So we were at the peak of the market. You had a home sale contingency, which is extremely common, especially people buying their, upgrade home. in this market, a home sale contingency is a huge obstacle because the seller has to say, well, I don't want to go for a ride with you while you sell your house.
Right.
Now, it did help you that we were able to say that we had a cash offer, and that they were going light on inspections. There was no appraisal concerns because it's cash.
Right.
So that definitely helped. But in that particular situation, there's a few transactions in my career where it's like this match is like too good to be true, where this house, I'm shocked we got this house or had a shot at it. And I think that's one of them where it was like, this is a great value. It's a great deal. I think our bigger concerns, and I share in this with you, is that not even a concern, but a challenge is that you're self-employed. And I know all too well how that makes things challenging.
Yes.
So, you were smart in taking my word for it that I had some people that could help. And, they did everything they could as far as, speaking of me dealing with them, is they were very responsive to me. So when I knew there were times to check in on them, they had all the information. I can tell you that is definitely not always the case. So we always talk to people about using the big banks, Bank of America, Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage, all those places that, particularly in a situation like this where it's kind of going to be challenging because there's a home sale contingency and there's a lot of moving parts. I can't just like call the guy at Rocket Mortgage and say, hey, it's Craig. I just want to check in on Lori's loan. I need to give an update to the other side. It's like an 800 number. You hear typing. They're like, all right, well, let me look up her file. As opposed to calling someone like Joe and Jeff, where they're like, oh, hey, Craig, yeah, let me tell you what's going on with Lori. Like they already know the updates. So it's a huge difference, because then I get to call the other agent and say, all right, so here's the updates. If you don't have that available to you, especially in a home sale contingent deal, it can be a huge red flag for the listing agent. And they say, oh boy, I'm getting nervous about what's going on over here. Another one that you have knowledge of is my listing in Milford that never sold, which is exactly what happened. Is I could never get a hold of the lender, blew through the closing date and never got a hold of them. And then they told us 2 weeks later that they didn't qualify for a mortgage. So in fact, they never did. So
I have to say that, if it weren't for your expertise and the team that you have behind you, that I don't think this would have ever happened.
I appreciate that. I mean, I not for nothing, it was an all hands on deck situation for sure.
It was every day.
Yeah, it was. And, you have firsthand knowledge of the other side of it for me as a professional, as managing emotions and managing expectations, because I know that I think you were a little more pessimistic than I was. And I kept telling him, like, Lori, it's going to be fine. But here's our question marks. And this is what we're trying to figure out right now. But I think you're going to be fine. And I was telling you, honestly, like me saying, I think you're going to be fine is like, we're like 75% good, but like, we do still have these questions that are out there, and getting self-employed funding on a house is just never easy. It's super tedious. And there's all the document requests and everything else. And, I've told you, and I actually told Jana too, that, credit to you for sticking with it, because a lot of people just like can't keep up with the requests. And I always tell people, I know it's super painful, but there's a reason that it's that painful, is that they have to get the utmost confidence that they're going to be able to close the loan. And then I can pass that confidence on from the lender to the listing agent. And that's what makes it possible for you to get into a situation like that. So that was challenging. We get it under contract, and then we get the second round of challenges, which is it was essentially an estate. I think it was an estate, or I don't know if it was an estate or they had just moved out already.
Yeah, they moved out, but then they got another offer. And
that's right.
I was not out of attorney review. I had like one more day of attorney review, and then they accepted another offer.
That's right. So, and that's another example of like, that's why you go with the good lender, so that listing agent is able to tell his seller clients, look, I know we got another offer, but they're pretty far along. I know their lender, yada, yada, yada. I'm confident this will go through. If we had been squirrely up until that point, they would have been over. I tell a lot of newer agents, like in any transaction, especially one like this, where there's a lot of moving parts, is there's like all these crossroads, like there's forks in the road, like all the way through the transaction. And at any given point, you can make a bad decision and it's over. And that's one of those times where it's like, if we hadn't had our ducks in a row up until that point, it would have been done. So yeah, I forgot about that aspect. That's right.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know how many lenders you can call, and they're like, "Hi, Lori."
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's how much I talk to them. They're like, they knew it was me calling.
That is definitely why we tell people to use local lenders, because every listing agent would rather have, a letter from someone that they can talk to, because sometimes the listing agent has to call the lender. When you see it's going to be Bank of America, or, not to keep throwing Bank of America under the bus, but unfortunately that's where we've had the most issues. But you're calling an 800 number, and that person doesn't really know Lori. It's just,
Right.
let me look up her file.
Well, they knew me.
Um,
They knew everything about me.
yeah, that's right. um, then we had some issues with the house. I mean, there was, and this is a pretty common one for us, is that you have, most of the people that were handling the seller side had really no knowledge of the house. So now you have to manage the expectations that, okay, we did the inspection and there are some issues here, and we need to navigate them in a reasonable way. And Hunterdon County, the septic is always a huge question mark. And you had the issues that you had were very common. But again, we had a situation where they were not expecting that. I think they were just expecting this to be over quickly.
Right.
So, on the back end, you had the listing agent is someone I know pretty well from the area. There's this movement, especially like on TikTok, of people saying like, you don't need real estate agents anymore. They don't make their money. They're just in it for money. It's super easy. They're useless. And this is, I always say, well, then you should probably talk to someone who's used a realtor, because that is definitely not true. It's not an easy job. There's no question
No.
it's not an easy job. It's super high emotions. It's high stakes at all times. And there is a lot of back end negotiating I remember when we found out that what the inspection issues were, and I won't get into the details, but let's say that, one of them was around the septic. I have to call the listing agent, and we have to have a talk about what he's going to tell his seller clients. And so him and I discuss it first. We're both experienced. We know that, with a septic situation, I mean, if it's functioning, that's fine. But if the distribution box is broken, every Hunterdon County realtor that's worth their salt knows that's a problem. So we discussed it ahead of time. We talked about what potential resolutions there were in addition to the other issues that we had. And I think we had a couple rounds, because I think we had we had 2 inspections after the initial inspections. He hears out what I'm saying. He says, okay, I'm on board. It sounds good. Let me talk to my sellers. And then he has to get them up to speed. And then you also had the pleasure of working with Miss Suzanne Light, who is also doing that with the other attorney. And it's all of that negotiating. All that is doing is basically whittling it down to have the attorney, the other agent, get back to the sellers and say, listen, we have some issues here. This is what they're proposing. It is pretty reasonable. It's industry standard. They're not asking for anything crazy. They're just doing their due diligence. We always say, like, what would you do if you were in Lori's situation as a seller? Would you just buy a house that had a septic system that had issues? So we went through all that process, and I think even that was tense at times. I think we weren't sure, because there were issues, and I don't think anyone was really expecting it. And
then they had the other offer. So
and they're sitting on the other offer, which they did mention to us a few times, which is always like, okay, they are definitely dangling that other offer in front. Yeah. But I think a lot of times the seller is dangling that offer. The agent knows that, like, okay, we don't want to start over. Like, and that other offer, by the way, they're going to have the same issues most likely. So again, that's kind of when you start bottling it down and funneling it down to what's reasonable, because, okay, sure, you have another offer. You mean to tell me those people aren't going to ask about the septic? Like, so it's a lot of that is conditioning, and the other listing agent has to go back to their client and say, look, here's the situation. And that's why having good agents on both sides is so key, because if that's a bad agent, if it's just an inexperienced agent, they're like, oh my God, they're asking for everything. Well, we're not. We're asking for what's normal. But if that agent doesn't know that and then tells their seller client, oh, forget it, they're just asking for too much. Well, guess what happens? The next seller comes in to take the deal on, and then they go through the same thing. And that agent doesn't look very good in the end, because they're like, wait, I thought you said that those other people were being ridiculous. Now these people are asking for the same thing. Right. So, that's really, I always tell people, like, real estate agents, the whole value is not finding a house, because like we all have Zillow. Like you're looking at the same house as I am. A lot of people register on my website and they're like, I just wanted to see what houses you had for sale. I'm like, that website is literally fed from the same place that Zillow gets all their listings. Like we all have the same houses. That's not why you're picking out a realtor. Now, listen, if people need help with that part of the process, of course, that's something I'm often involved in, but more often than not, especially with younger generations, I'd even go so far as to say anyone under the age of like 50, they're finding the houses on their own. And then they're just that's usually, I think, where I say that the realtor's value starts there. I'll find you the house and I'll get it for you. I'll get your offer accepted. But then from that point forward is really where the value is navigating all this and saying, no, Lori, this is normal. Don't worry about it. On both the buyer and seller side. And yeah, it's crazy on TikTok. There's so much of a definitely younger generations. For sale by owner is huge. Like pushing you don't need a realtor to sell your home, which is, I could do a whole separate unit on that. I mean, it's, what you'll hear is why pay 6% commission. Now, first of all, there's no such thing as a standard commission. We're literally not allowed to say that. So it's 6% is probably on the high end of commissions, but we're not allowed to say like standard commission. That's definitely like an antitrust issue. But in addition to that, even if you do for sale by owner, if you're not compensating the buying agent 2.5% or 2%, you're going to lose all your buyers because they don't want to deal with just doing a person. Some people do, but the stat is that you'll lose about 80% of your buyers. 20% will hang in there and say, all right, fine, I'll deal directly with the person. But obviously that's not going to fetch you the best price. But then if you are paying that buyer's agent 2.5% or 3%, then you're not saving 6%. You're saving 4, 3.5, something like that. And then at the end of the day, to save like 3%, to have to do all the stuff that we just talked about on your own is
no way.
Yeah, it's like absolutely crazy approach. But it is, I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you get into real estate to be in a quote unquote respected profession, you're in the wrong profession. No, I don't have any illusions that I'm going to be considered a respected professional other than my past clients. I think that they understand it and we have a good relationship, but I think just the lay person might not think, oh, realtor, that's fantastic. How, gracious of you to be a realtor. I don't think that's ever the case. So, but that's fine. If I have to, spend my time explaining my value, that's really not the biggest challenge of this job. So,
well, but, I think it's easy, for someone who's thinking of selling their house on their own. It's easy to put a for sale sign up, take some pictures and get it on the MLS, but there's so many components and so many moving parts. Totally. And it's constant, it's always something always comes up.
Yeah. I wouldn't, go ahead.
I wouldn't have, there's no way I would have still been in my townhouse if it wasn't for you. I would have been like, forget it.
I wouldn't wish it on anyone, like regardless of where I factor into the equation, like I just wouldn't wish that stress on anyone. And I think what a lot of people think is, so the big talking point these days is, well, I know how the market is, so my house is going to sell no matter what. And that is totally not the case. I mean, you're familiar with 2 of the listings that we worked on together, that one just did not sell. It's still not sold. And the other one that took way longer than we thought it would.
Yes.
It's not that simple. There's a lot more to it. And in addition to that, if you do have one like yours, where you're going to get, a ton of offers on the first day, is just knowing how to sort through those offers, like which ones are the good ones, is not clear as day. It's not just about price.
Right, that's a whole other thing. The biggest offer is not necessarily the best, because just like the whole transaction, there's so many components that go into a solid offer that's going to actually go through.
Totally. I mean, you definitely want to see who their lenders are. I mean, in the situation I had recently that we just talked about, where the deal fell apart, we didn't have options. We got one offer, and it had been months and months since we had any other offers or visits or anything. And it fell apart predictably because they had a terrible lender. But, getting, back a while, some of the other ones you helped me with, I had one in Raritan, Dory and Mark, who I think you worked with Dory and Mark in Raritan. That was probably like the literal peak. I think we had 100 people at the open house. I actually had to have Angelo help me with the open house because I could not handle. That was also peak COVID. And I think we ended up with 24 offers. And unlike yours, there wasn't a clear like winner because you had a cash offer, and that's any cash
Right.
offers are going to immediately rise to the top. But they had all financing. So like then you have to like start whittling down to like what lenders are they using, what the prices are, what the inspection requests are. What do you know about the other agent? Is the other agent going to be able to coach their clients through this process? We get a lot of offers when we get those multiple offer situations where they just show up in our inbox and I've never talked to the agent. And I'm like, who is this person? Where did this come from? Like, how did they even know I'm going to get it? Because offers end up in my spam all the time.
Yeah, I think like you put my townhouse on the MLS like maybe a couple days before the open house, and we were getting offers without even people seeing the house, like just
Oh yeah.
looking at pictures. And I was like, oh, let's just wait till
Yeah. And how many drive-bys did you get?
a lot.
Yeah.
People walking around the house and looking in my window.
My parents, who are, the nice way of saying this are I think the time in their life where they could have managed selling a house is probably in the past. But they had told me at one point out of frustration that they were going to sell their own house. Nothing against me. They just decided that they were just going to save the commission and they wanted to sell their own house. And I said to my mom, I'm like, let's just start with the most basic thing. Your phone is going to be ringing off the hook. People want to come see the house and you have to schedule them. How are you going to do that? And the look was like, yeah, I don't want to do any of that. Like just that alone. Like you would have, we had a lot of showings on your house, even though it sold pretty quickly. I mean, there was, I don't know, 10, 12, 14, somewhere in there in the few days we were on the market.
Yeah.
I mean, even just keeping track of that is a pain in the neck. But yeah, I mean, it's, you definitely had an all hands on deck situation. And I would say in this market over the past 2 years, that's most transactions. I kept telling you during that time, I'm like, other than the fact that, you're self-employed and that's challenging. Other than that, it was a pretty conventional situation. And it's, you definitely have to be so strategic about it. And every transaction these days is like that. Everything is heightened emotions, especially when people are paying top price. They just feel like, I think probably subconsciously, they need to get it back in the inspection. There's just more tension in every transaction. So again, I just wouldn't, my commissions and my profession aside, I just wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's really tough out there these days. So I think having a good professional on your side is so key.
Yes,
so,
definitely.
Even the attorneys, I mean, we, I think when I first got into real estate, I said to Shannon, like my first couple transactions, I'm like, I don't understand where the negotiating comes in. I know real estate agents are supposed to be like good negotiators, but like, I don't understand where that comes in. And that was more a product of like the 1 or 2 transactions I had already. And then like, I remember also updating her later and be like, oh, now I get it. In your situation, it's calling the listing agent, getting them up to speed on what happened in the inspection, start talking about expectations. Well, what's your seller thinking about this? Do you think this is going to be a problem? All of that kind of pre-negotiation is so huge, but also the attorneys appreciate it. So a lot of times with Suzanne, I'll call Suzanne and say like, all right, here's what I talked about with the other agent. Here's the bullet points. Here's the 5 items. And she's always like, thank you so much. Cause like now I don't have to, lawyers really don't do a ton of negotiating in terms of like starting from scratch. They generally are working off what we're telling them. And especially someone like Suzanne, who I work with all the time, that's a pretty locked in process that we have. We're very familiar with each other. And when I tell her something, she can believe me because she's got experience with me. But that's definitely where your realtor comes in, those negotiations. It's a lot of managing expectations and feeling things out. And that's why when we take offers, we take those 20 offers, the other agent is a variable on it. Is like, if they're really, over the top and don't know what they're doing, it's going to be challenging. We had one with our mutual client over in, I don't want to name any names, but over in Holland Township. We had a deal, and she was one of the ones that got like 21 offers, and the highest offer was all cash, waived everything, no inspections, no nothing. And what happened was, this is what happens when an agent is inexperienced, or I don't know what the story was there, but they call us during attorney review and they say, all right, so we talked to our attorney and we don't want to waive anything. And we're like, well, that's kind of why we took your offer. So now what? Now, at that point, if that were me on the receiving end of that, or if it was me dictating that, I would have my tail between my legs and say, I'm so sorry, but we will work through this. It's our fault. It's not yours. But instead, we had a very combative agent. The agent was like, well, if you don't like it, then, you can whatever. And I was like, all right, well, I'll tell you what, it's not my decision, but I am going to tell my client, my seller, how this conversation went, and I'll see what she says. So I did. And she was not too pleased with it because she's a very nice person, and she was like a little put off by it. But she's like, all right, whatever. It's very emotional. Let's stick with it. Round 2, I call the other agent and say, okay, we're going to stick it out. And instead of her being like, thank you so much, I really appreciate it, so sorry about the misunderstanding, combative again. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, do you think this is like, buying or selling Sunset on Netflix? Like the negotiation strategy was so skewed. So I called my client back and I said, hey, I told her, but she was combative again. And she's like, I'm done. We killed the deal. And we started calling the other offers, and the next one up was, super nice and super appreciative. And it was a smooth transaction from that point forward. But, the realtor you hire is a big deal. I don't know if those clients of hers ever knew that she essentially tanked the deal for them.
Probably not.
Their deal. Yeah. So, I mean,
yeah, I have to say that, along, the whole process, you knew what was going on every step of the way. Suzanne, our real estate attorney, knew what was going on every step of the way. And so did Joe, the lender. So it was just, everybody was kind of on the same page because everybody was communicating.
Yep.
And although there were a lot of obstacles and challenges, it made it so much smoother that everybody was like, knew what was going on.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. You definitely had a challenging one, and there were a lot of challenging ones, but you had one of them. And imagine what that would have been like if we weren't talking together. Because like a lot of times
it wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked. Exactly right. I mean, we have people come to us with attorneys all the time. So like I meet a new client and they're like, oh, it's okay, I already have an attorney. It's my cousin. And he doesn't really do real estate, but he's done a few real estate deals. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. Or I had a client that had they found one for $500 and they were like super psyched. They're like, oh, my friend used them and it went well. And I'm like, just because your friend used them buying their first house, they used the $500 attorney, it happened to go okay. I wouldn't say that's like a good strategy for me, who sells like 30 homes a year, recommending like that may be a red flag. Well, guess what? It was red flag. So yeah, I mean, that is the reason that I tell my clients a lot, like, here's my people. I'm just offering them to you. You can work with whoever you want, lender and attorney wise, but I'm just telling you, these are my people. They are fantastic. At this point, I mean, in my career, I've worked with probably 50 different attorneys. And I always have to make clear, like, there's no incentive for you to use Joe to me. I don't get anything out of that. There's absolutely nothing. But what I know is that, I know Joe, and I know Joe's going to be a total professional, and I know Suzanne, and Suzanne's going to be, a total professional and a bulldog if we need her to be a bulldog. Like I know Suzanne's style. So, now we're all confident, we're all talking, we're used to working with each other. And that is definitely, the way to go when I have my choice. I don't always have my choice. In fact, I had to call Suzanne because I was like, I know I haven't used you for a while. It's not me. And she's like, I just want to make sure you were okay because I haven't heard from you. So it was the first time in my career we had like a 3-month gap, but it was just because people came to me with their own real estate attorneys. So, but yeah, it was yours was definitely a fun one. But I'm glad that you're.
It was fun when I actually got in here.
Yes, that's for sure.
That was fun.
Most
that was a fun day.
All right. Anything else you want to mention?
If anybody's looking for a real estate agent, I highly recommend Craig. He has a lot of experience. I would say he's an expert at what he does, and he has a great team of people behind him that made my transaction go really smoothly. And it would not have if he didn't have a team of people in place that were all on the same page, all communicating. I really believe like that would have just never happened.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Definitely appreciate working with you. I like doing these a lot more when it's like a total stranger because I know you said you were like nervous before you did this. It's actually harder when it's like a friend like you. But I definitely appreciate, and what I think is like really fun about you is like I literally came to you when I had nothing going on. I had one transaction under my belt. I was suddenly a full-time realtor and I had no I had no parachute. I had no backup plan or anything. And you've gotten to come along for the whole ride. And, you know, you've also seen me go through some challenges with the market and everything else. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, I think I would say that the business is successful at this point. So, it's been fun, like going for that ride with you, and then you got to experience it firsthand. So that was really fun. But all right, well, that's 50 minutes. Did you think it would go that fast?
No.
That's good. All right. Well, I thank you very much. And I will see you soon, obviously. But thanks a lot for coming by. And
thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.
All right. Take care, Lori. All right. So that's my good buddy, Lori Ferri. And I highly, highly, highly recommend Ironworks Fitness for anyone who's looking for a gym. And if you want to hear more stories, I'll probably be sharing more real estate stories in the future. I also, on my TikTok channel, will be telling some real estate stories. So thank you so much. And I will see you all next Friday. Take care.